Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, we live in a very different time as far as Diablo 4 goes, and especially as far as the whole concept of the rarest items in the game. For the 4.5 months between the game's release and the start of Season 2, aside from one strange night of exploits being taken advantage of, there was one type of item that had dropped for less than 200 players in the entire Diablo 4 player base of millions. That item type is the Uber Unique, a special kind of item that is supposed to offer extreme power in exchange for the actual drop rate being insanely tiny. In Season 2, however, all this changed with the addition of the 5 endgame bosses. Each of these allows you to target farm specific uniques with one special bonus that the new level 100 Uber boss, Duriel, the King of Maggots, who has a uniquely high drop rate on Uber Uniques. Well-known Diablo streamer Rob has been running pretty much endless Duriel runs, and after days of farming it, he had some relatively concrete statistics to share with us all. Duriel on average has a 2% drop rate on Uber Uniques. That means that 1 out of every 50 Duriels that you kill, you should have an Uber Unique drop. This is obviously boosted significantly in a party as well, as it is 2% per player. So in a group of 4 where you kill Duriel, you each have that 2% chance for this to happen. While it is a lot of farming, sure, it's a lot of kills and a hell of a lot more time just farming these summoning materials themselves, it is extremely achievable for an average player if they actually care about doing it. The thing is, that 2% is just an Uber Unique drop in general, not a specific one of them. For example, my pride and joy, my only Uber Unique that I've ever owned, dropped a couple of days ago on my Druid, and it was a Barbarian, the unique staff. Not my personal top choice by any means, but an Uber Unique, nonetheless very cool to see. This happened in around my 20th Duriel run, so I just got fairly lucky. However, in another kill during the same session, a different member of my group got the Ring of Starless Skies, and it wasn't even a long session, it just happened to go that way. That to say, Uber Uniques are definitely around now, but you may have to work a bit harder if there is one specific one of them that you are aiming to have, rather than just the concept of owning a Uber Unique in general. In fact, if you want to dive in even further, it is 1 in 50 kills on average just to get one Uber Unique. There are 7 Uber Uniques in the game, which means on average, your odds are 1 in 350 every time you kill Duriel to get one specific Uber Unique, or at least that would be the case if every class could get every Uber, which they can't, so there's a bit more to it. 4 of the Uber Uniques are accessible to every class in the game. A Barbarian is Druid and Sorcerer only, so they have 5 possible Uber Uniques. Joining them is Rogue, whose only extra one is Doombringer for 5 total as well. Then Barbarian and Necromancer, however, can get both Doombringer and the Grandfather, which brings their pool of Uber Uniques in total to 6. In other words, let's say that you want the harlequin crest specifically, because everyone does, it's incredible. Your average number of Duriel kills to have it drop is 1 in 250 for Druid, Sorcerer, and Rogue, but it is 1 in 300 for Barbarian and Necromancer. While those numbers are a hell of a lot higher than 1 in 50, they're still something that you could set as a long-term goal rather than just farming the hell out of it purposefully right now. Just being aware that 1 in 250 or even 1 in 300 isn't actually insane if we are talking about multiple seasons of gameplay, which means one of these seasons it just will happen. With all of that said, we now have a way to farm these. We know these statistics around the likelihood of getting them all, so why not do something that we have more reason to do now more than ever, and just rank the Uber Uniques by how good they are and how much they will change your life if they drop. Number 1, without a single trace of a doubt, is the Harlequin Crest, also known as Shaco. This is just the perfect item. High as hell bonus max life roll, cooldown reduction, which pretty much everyone loves, resource generation, which is just alright, and then 28 all stats, which is also very not bad. But then it basically has 2 separate effects, one of which is 20% damage reduction. It's also worth noting that as a patch 1.2.1, which is hitting as this video drops, Uber Uniques will always roll maxed out, so you can never have a bad roll, so just 20% damage reduction without any variance. Then the most valuable stat in the entire game, +4 ranks to all skills. Not +4 ranks to core skills, not +4 to basic or +4 to defensives, it's +4 to all skills. The absolute massive difference this makes is just impossible to overstate. For offense, skilled ranks are more valuable than anything else that you can get, especially now in Season 2, so 4 on all offensive skills is very nuts. But then for defensives, this often reduces the cooldown or increases the potency of the various skills, so it will affect every aspect of your gameplay and your build from the moment that this drops forward. I don't think there's any argument to be made against this being number 1. Second, then I'm going to put Andariel's Visage, another helmet. This one is just extremely solid and it can slot into any build that doesn't have a required helmet unique to function. 20% lucky hit chance to trigger a Poison Nova Nova for a massive chunk of damage over time to enemies in the area, and that's alright. It has some nice synergies with a couple of classes, and it can also work with Saval's Corroded Signet. The new unique ring is a bit of a combo, but the big thing with this helmet is one specific affix. It has 18 all stats, which is okay, 10% attack speed, which is actually pretty good, 60% poison res, which is also pretty nice to have, but then there is that 2% lifesteal. That affix is not on anything else in the game, and it is silly strong. Think of the damage numbers that you hit enemies for, and then think about your own maximum health. If you are the beefiest of the beefy, you have like 20k life. If you are that well built, you probably also hit for millions of damage quite frequently. Well, at 2% lifesteal, 1 million health is a full heal to someone with just 20k. And that said, this is the unupgraded stats as well, so that number can even go up to even more lifesteal, so you don't even have to hit as hard. And honestly, with the frequency of hits in this game, this will make you essentially just immortal against anything that doesn't literally one-shot you. Third up, I'm putting Doomringer, which is different to how I would have rated them last season. Doomringer gives you a 25% lucky hit chance to do a pop of shadow damage to nearby enemies and reduce their damage done by 20% for 5 seconds. Most builds can proc that at least once every 5 seconds, so this is just a nice constant damage reduction. On top of that, its affixes are a nice meaty core damage bonus, 17.5% bonus damage in general, 5% lucky hit chance to restore health, which is okay, but the big kicker of plus 26% maximum life. That is an absolutely insane amount. I mean, think of every bonus maximum life affix you have on your gear, then imagine if you got the equivalent of all of them put together from one stat. That's the one on the sword. But then also, if you put that together with all of your other affixes too, it will compound multiplicatively to be even sillier, which is how people can reach maximum life numbers around 20,000. Fourth, we have the Grandfather. This one is a classic big meaty two-handed sword with a simple but very strong effect, which is a 100% increase to your critical strike damage, a multiplicative increase. This is an absolutely massive bonus, but it was a lot stronger before Season 2, because people were basically just stacking crit damage as high as possible in every single build before, but now things are much more balanced, which means the Grandfather has much less to actually multiply with its main effect, but it is also quite strong in general nonetheless. On top of that, it comes with great affixes for the most part, 56% bonus damage, a very high bonus max life roll, plus 72 to all stats, which is silly high for an all stats roll, and then ignores durability loss, which is sort of whatever. This weapon is a bit weaker compared to its old status, but still very good. The main negative taken away from it is it replaces a two-handed weapon slot, which is obviously a super high value location for pretty much everything. Fifth then is the Ring of Starless Skies. This is where you get to the part where things get a bit more specific. With the first 4 of these, I'd say if it drops for you in nearly any build, you can find a way to work it in well and increase your power in a notable way. But from here, it's less so. This ring's main effect is casting a core skill will reduce the resource cost of core skills by 12% up to a maximum of 40%, and it resets when you use any skill that is not a core. That effect is very, very good, but only if you either build around it purposefully, or if your class already has a build that basically presses nothing but core skills to put this into. There are some rogue builds, for example, that can make exceptional use out of this, as well as some sorcerer builds that could too, even Tornado Wolf Druid, but it's just not an instant stick it in type of thing. The affixes, however, are all fantastic. Lucky hit chance, crit damage, and core skill damage too, all nice bumps to your offense. Sixth up, I have the one that I got for myself, Ahavarian, the Spear of Lycander. Its main effect is when you kill an elite enemy, you get a random shrine buff on your character for up to 20 seconds, and this has an internal cooldown of 30 seconds. You can't get it more frequently than that. The effect is very funky and definitely quite fun, but it is very limited power-wise compared to the rest. First, the effect is triggered upon killing an elite, which means it won't be active when you engage said elite pack in the first place, and it doesn't do anything on bosses either. Second, the internal cooldown is killer. Even if you stack the maximum amount of bonus shrine buff duration, you get this effect to last for about 28.5 seconds every time you proc it, which is again less than the internal cooldown, even though it's a lot closer, and this means that you cannot keep a shrine buff quite permanently active, though it is sort of close. The main failing of this though is simply RNG, as you have no way of predicting which shrine buff you're going to get. That said, this has some workable places, even as a two-handed weapon, mostly because the affixes on it are just absolutely bonkers. Massive crit chance for a weapon, insane attack speed also on a weapon where this would not go, and a really high just all damage increase. Then just a little bonus of reasonably high lucky hit chance to stun enemies when you hit them. All in all, this one is definitely fun, but outside of specific builds, it has limited use, and even in its limited use, the actual power increase from having it isn't that noticeable. It just changes the way the game feels, which is cool in itself, to be fair. If I were going to put a little note out to the devs on how I would fix this, what I would do is remove the 30-second internal cooldown, but what you do is every time that you get a new shrine buff, it replaces the old one, so you can't have multiple active from the weapon at the same time. That way, it will activate every time you kill an elite, so it resets your timer, but you are still, beholden to the slot machine of randomness that it could be any one of the shrine buffs in the game. I think that would be a really cool way to make it both stronger and still not take away from the idea of it or make it overpowered. Then in last place we have the Melted Heart of Selig. Sorry, but it is what it is. The main effect of this is gain 30 max resource, and in addition, when you take damage, you lose your resource for every % of health that you would have lost instead, only actually draining health if you run out of resource. The problem with this is that it is very sort of contradictory to itself. It is an amulet, which means it's an important slot for aspects and uniques normally anyways, but its affixes are all stats, core skill damage, damage while healthy, and resource generation. That core skill damage is a problem area for this, because to me, the only builds this actually synergizes with are the ones that purposefully avoid using core skills. If you were to put this in a core skill build, it would suck. You will lose resource when you don't want to, because it's just taking damage makes you lose resource, which means that you can't do your damage properly. Then when you run out of resource, you'll just start losing health and constantly sitting at 0 resource, because every bit of resources you generate is going to get eaten by more damage coming in until you slowly die, because you can't do anything. The only way to use this properly is in non-core builds, and its best use is something that pretty much exclusively uses basic attacks as a way to generate other resources, like the version of Ball Lightning Sorcerer that relies purely on unstable currents procs on Arclash, or the Druid build that uses Staff of the Crones and spams basic attacks without using cores. But even then, it is a purely defensive bonus, even in those super niche cases, and in a slot that usually has a lot of offensive value. Its use cases are few, its value even within them is relatively small. This is sadly just one with an interesting concept that doesn't quite make sense to use in actual gameplay. And that'll do it for today then, everyone. Just talking about some statistics that we are starting to have around the uber unique drop rates from Duriel, as well as what your realistic chances are of getting that one specific uber unique that you want to have, like Harlequin's crest, and not some other random one. Then with all that in mind, we broke down what the uber uniques are by ranking them from best to worst, so if you do get an uber unique, you'll have some concept of how much it will or will not change the entire remainder of your playtime this season. I hope you've enjoyed all of this, and let me know your own thoughts on these down below, whether you agree with me or not. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.